Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to day 3 of the Premiere Pro class. Today's a juicy one. We're covering 3 pretty big topics, things that can really take your videos to the next level as soon as you learn how they work and how you can implement them into your videos. In today's video, we're covering the effects panel, the effects control panel. I'll briefly run over the Lumetri color tab and I'll also explain how keyframes work. So let's jump into the computer. So what we've got here is the timeline from yesterday's video. Now, if we jump up here into effects controls, this is like a never-ending panel. There's so many things that you can do. There's so many built-in presets that you can apply to your footage straight away. It's just about knowing which ones are best. Now, 5 of my favorite effects that I use are blur. So you throw on just a Gaussian or a directional blur here, throw that onto there, and boom, there's that. Now, if we go up into the effects control panel, this is, as the name says, how you control your effects. But if I go down here, we're at directional blur, if I go down here and I crank this fellow up, and look, what happens over here is we have a pretty wacky blur all over that footage, which I control with the effects control panel. Funny that. Now to just get rid of that, just click here and delete. If we head back to the effects panel, another one that I really like to use is the crop tool. If I grab the crop here and bring this down, head back over to the effects control panel, what I can do is I can crop my image, say I only want to have half on the screen or only want just a little bit of my image. I can pull in the percentages pretty easily with that there. Now, something that I want you to remember is the effects control will only come up when you've clicked on that clip that you want in your timeline. If I click on this clip here, this is the effect controls only for this clip. So if I move my cursor across to be on this clip, you can see that I've cut these clips apart and they're separated. I could completely blur that down, but then this clip is independent of this one. Now, another effect that I love to use is called the warp stabilizer effect. Now, this is super handy, but only in certain situations. What it does is it tries to limit a little bit of the movement in your footage. It's got kind of a short range that it works from. It works great on some videos, but when there's multiple types of movement in the footage, it will start to rebound, so it actually makes the footage worse. If the warp stabilizer effect, which pretty much within reason stabilizes your footage, if it sounds like something that could be helpful if you do a lot of vlogging like this or handheld footage, jump on YouTube and look into a specific warp stabilizer video and it will explain where you can actually use it to make the most of it and where you should probably avoid using it because, yeah, as I said, the range that it actually properly works is quite limited. So jump on, look at an in-depth video dedicated just to warp stabilizer. So that's trying to run its thing in the analyzing the background. That can take forever because it's a pretty wild clip. You see your percent down here. If we just cancel that, I obviously don't need a warp stabilizer on there. Click here and get rid of it. So 2 other effects that I use are usually just considered the default transitions. Now, if you go down between 2 different clips and click in between them and go Command D, what you do is you create sort of a cross dissolve or a fade, something like that. Now, something I wish I knew when I started editing is you can actually do a cross dissolve between audio. So if you have one audio track and then a different audio track, and if you just leave them sort of the same, you hear that really big change in tone or pitch or something, you can go down to an audio track and you can hit Shift Command D. And what that does is that makes pretty much a cross dissolve on your audio. It's actually called a constant power. And what it does is it mixes the 2 audio levels together, it crosses them over. They sort of fade into each other, which means you don't notice that big sort of change in pitch or tone or sound. Or if you're going like a music track to an interview track, it kind of just happens really smoothly, and that's something that I did not know for a long time. So constant power, Shift Command D, Command D for cross dissolve, and just remember all these keyboard shortcuts are for a Mac also. So if you're using a Windows, jump on Google and work out what the conversion keys are for that. Another one of my favorite effects to use is the dip to black or the dip to white. Now what this does, it obviously depends on what you're going for, but when I'm dissolving into a logo at the end of the video, I really love to use the dip effect. So if I have a white screen with a black logo on it, what I'll do is I'll drag down the dip to white at the end, and you can see how this works here. Dips to white. A secret to this one is make sure you go to your project and come down here to your color mat. Now click here, you can pick any color in the RGB spectrum or any color ever, really, and I will choose white. And what you can do is if you drag this on the layer below and throw a dip to white on the layer above, so your footage, if you play that, what you can do is, yep, dip to white, and then the footage stays white. And then what I would have here is I'd have my logo file. Say if I just bring in my McLeod Media logo just for reference. If I then put my McLeod Media logo on here, like this, I can make this look like a really professional outro, just off really quick movements. There we go. If I throw a cross dissolve on top of my McLeod Media, coming across here, dip to white, fades out, and then voila. How professional does that look? That's a little tip that I think is really helpful, and you can do the same thing if your logo's white and you want it on a black background. Just pick dip to black there and then move that out and put a black color mat underneath. Moving on from effects, the effects control panel over here actually offers options for every clip. So any clip that you click on, it all has these default effects already put to it. So motion, opacity, and time remapping. So your opacity is how transparent your image is. Your motion allows you to control all your scales and positioning. So your rotation's up here too. And this actually leads into our next topic of keyframes. A keyframe is kind of like where you set a point and then you can transition to a different point. So say you set point A to point B. That's what a keyframe does. Now if I click here and I want to set my scale, you come over this little stopwatch where you toggle an animation. Now see over here in this little timeline here, that's a keyframe. So this keyframe here, it's stamped the 50% scale as it is. Now if I move along my video here, if I hit this little button here, add or remove a keyframe, and I drag up this to say 100, another keyframe pops up. Now if I scroll back in here, you'll see a really nice zoom. If you watch the footage and the keyframe, and there's a really, it's hard with the footage is moving, but there's a really slow zoom in to the footage. You almost can't notice it. It almost looks like it's been done in camera. Now, if I was to pull this keyframe back, you'll see that this zoom happens so much faster. And then fast zoom, and you can notice it. So it really depends on what you're trying to do with your footage and the feel you're going for. If you're going for a really moody sort of slow zoom, or if you're a really fast-paced zoom and you want to go from out to in really fast, and you set your duration with your keyframes of how fast you want something to move. It works the exact same way with the position or the rotation or even the opacity. You can set your opacity to slowly fade out over time. Same with the position. If I have this clip here and I click on position and then I move it along a little bit, and if I say I want to move this down, as we set this here, you'll see that the clip moves based on where the keyframes are set. The possibilities are endless with keyframes. It's quite a big topic with keyframes, but they're a really fun tool to be able to master. Now our last topic for this video is the Lumetri Color tab. Now Lumetri Color is Premiere Pro's built-in color correction tool. What you can do here is you have a fair bit of range with your color. So see this clip here of professional soccer player Alex Chidiac balancing on a foam block. The colors in this image are quite balanced already. But say I wanted to go for a real warm vibe. I can go to my temperature here and I can bring it up to make it look very sepia tone, or I can bring it down to make it look very blue or very daylight, depending on the kind of the tone of my video. If we just want to keep that just normal, you also have your white balance selector tools. So if I just go up and just select a white part of the image, what I can do is click down here, and what it will do is Premiere will adjust my white balance to be actually white for me. You can see it actually wasn't too far off in camera, which means that there's only very sort of minuscule changes that Premiere makes. Here's your exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. So you have a bit of control over those, and just down there to reset them. Now you have your saturation here, bring it up, down in colors. Now the Lumetri Color tab is quite intense. It's pretty in depth. I really don't want to confuse you guys too much in this video, so I'll keep it just at the basic corrections tab. There's so much you can do. You can split your HSL colors, which I don't want to do right now. You have your color wheel, so you can pick between your highlights, your midtones, and your shadows, and really get deep into the color grading process. A lot of you guys won't have to worry about that. Probably don't come to me for your professional color grading skills. It's definitely not my strong point. Curves here, I use the curves panel a lot. You want to set your point and you want to make an S usually. So you want to balance your tones within your S. So bring them down and see that already. If I turn this on and off, it's brought the contrast up, so it's much more of a dynamic image. So up in the basic corrections tab, you have a LUT. You can buy or download LUTs from a lot of different websites. I have a few go-to LUTs. The classic creator one is the teal fade or teal and orange, just here. Super duper popular look for a lot of Instagram creators. Yeah, for most videos, I don't really use LUTs too much. I will find that I set up a certain color for individual clients. If I'm doing a video series, I'll carry that LUT or that color correction process across a series of videos. But other than that, that's pretty much all for today's video. I know it was pretty dense. There's a lot to pick up in this video. I didn't want to confuse you guys too much, but hopefully that has helped with a little bit more of the expansion of knowledge around the Premiere Pro tool. We've got 2 more classes to come for Premiere Pro over the next 2 days. Got my notes here in the next 2 days. So day 4, we're going to cover adjustment layers. We're going to cover the bins, so how to organize your footage to keep your project panel nice and clean. A messy project panel is not a fun time, and we're also going to do a little bit of a dive into the essential graphics panel. Probably one of my favorite features of Premiere Pro. We're going to dive into essential graphics tomorrow, so get excited for that. And then on day 5, we're going to go over export settings, and I'm going to tell you some of my favorite tips and tricks that may have not made it into a video so far, but little things that I've picked up over my 5 years of editing with Premiere Pro. So thanks for tuning in for this video, guys, and you know what? See you guys tomorrow.